So what we're going to do first is also talk about the main ways we navigate through the system when we're working with assets and results. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that asset index page. And right away, you can see at the top, we have our basic search bar. Sometimes you never know what you're going to have in front of you to be able to search for that asset that you want to find in the system. You might have the actual asset ID or instrument ID that you're used to managing via. You might just have a serial number. You might just have a general description that you put into the name of those assets in the name column across here. So what we can do here is search basically for any kind of containment, any kind of value that is contained in some of these key values can just be searched and hit the enter key to search right away for that. If you need a little more granular detail, we just hit this little drop down button. We basically get into our sort of advanced search. It's a nice, simple filtering tool that allows you to go through your basic nameplate information fields, as well as at least a subset of some of your test specification data fields that we have in PCX that allows you to search for items. Once you set up those types of lists, you can see the contents are across in the main client area of the application. And there's a couple of nice things you can do with most of these columns. You can click and drag a column to move it to a new location. You can click on a column to sort ascending or descending, depending upon what you're trying to do with that information. Across the top here, you also have your basic pagination controls in case you have more than 50 records at a time. You have your basic record counts that apply to your current filter. Then you have your basic action items that you can do. If I select one or more instruments, depending upon what I'm trying to do, I can edit that instrument, delete multiple items. I can clone an item in case you have something that's a nice example of what you want to create more of. I can pick an asset and either right from the overlay, I can start a calibration, I can right click and start a calibration, or I can certainly use the toolbar at the top. So it's all kind of simplistic ways of getting to those actions that you really want to do, as well as a couple of grid level controls, such as being able to reorder and display the columns in a layout of your choosing by this toolbar, the customize columns button, as well as once you get that view that you want to use, there's really two nice things you can do with this information. One is you can export that grid right to Excel. So no matter how many pages of information I have, I can export that into a single file that I can simply download and share. The other nice thing we can do is use our My Views, which is similar to the advanced query system in ProCal, that you're assigning a name for your filter, your columns, your sorting that you want to use for those assets. So as an example, I've used one of the classification flags that we have to indicate some assets that need specs set up. So when someone created this asset and they weren't sure how they were calibrated, they created the asset, this asset 6 pressure transmitter, for instance. And if I right click and do edit, or just use the edit button here, I also can expand this view. This is where we get into the actual edit of that asset. And you can actually see in the middle right here, we have a multi-use classification flag system, which to me is really nice because we've seen a lot of cases of one field being used for GMP critical, GMP non-critical, non-critical safety. In reality, you have a multitude of different types of classifications you need to worry about for your assets. Also, we can use some of these types of classifications to really just talk about record management. So in this case, we have a record management concern of this really needs review, needs specifications. I can go in and clear those out in preparation for what I'm about to do. We also have some nice features like type ahead for the actual pre-configured manufacturers and things like that. But what I'll do here is also go through, we have a tabbed interface still, right? And the next tab we want to deal with in our asset record is going to be our test specification. So in our test specification, we really have 3 types of test specifications that we manage today. Our test point accuracy test is going to be like our standard test in ProCal when the test type is blank. Test point strategy, a range or 2, and test points to test for accuracy at each point. We have our switch test. That's going to be the idea of ramping up and down a signal and detecting some state change, whether it's a short or an open of a switch. That's the type of test you can do with a switch. And of course, for anything that's external or something that you just want to keep track of, we certainly have our built-in manual pass-fail, which is just giving you the opportunity to set a separate as found and as left result, just simple pass and fail for those types of tests. So what we'll do is any of these little help icons you might see through the application will help give you guidance as to what the meaning of that field is. I'm going to go ahead and pick test point accuracy. And you can see that the form is populated, specifically for that. And I'll give this a title. So I'll just do this transmitter pressure. Thanks Google Chrome for the autofill. It's a nice thing to have. And what we'll do is, hopefully it's just kind of simple. It's very simple to what you see a lot of people doing the calibrations this way, is that I can go ahead and just pick a simple 5-up test. It's very common. I know that this is a very, very simple 0 to 100 PSI transmitter. And because I want to test the milliamp output function of this transmitter, I don't want to worry about PSI to PSI as if it were an indicator or a gauge. I don't want to check the PSI at the control board. I want to actually directly calibrate the milliamp output. I can click on the output range and go ahead and fill in my 4 to 20 milliamps. And you can see, again, there's a nice filtering capability. I can just hit enter on that selected milliamp and it has filled that for me in pretty quickly. And also we have those common types of tolerances. In this case, a simple selection of your tolerance type, percent of span, and I'll just say it's like 5.5. And so now I've set up my specs. I have a 5-point calibration, 0 to 100, 4 to 20 milliamps. This is very common that you see so many of. So when I like this asset, my little Rosemont 3051 here, and I'll go ahead and save and close that. I may want to go back and clone that a couple times. So now it no longer needs specs, no longer meets that criteria. So it's off my checklist of things I need to set up for specifications. But I'm going to go ahead and reset back to my main instrument view and go ahead and just sort by modified. I can see that record I just modified. And so now we've gone through this asset setup flow in a sense. Some of the information was already there for us as another team member maybe set up, and enhance that data to be ready for calibration.